Hello everybody and welcome to my Bow 2H critical damage stamina Nightblade build. This is, well, a pretty beastie build. It has got absolutely incredible sustain, a whopping 128% times critical damage bonus, 70% crit rate, and over 3.5k health recovery. This is an absolutely incredible build. You can literally permacloak on a stamina Nightblade, hit people like a truck, and easily get the heck out of there if things are not looking in your favor. This is probably the strongest stamina Nightblade build that I have ever played in my time playing this game, so I really hope you guys like this build. This is my favorite way to play the stamina Nightblade, so I really hope that you guys enjoy trying it out as well. If you guys like the build, hit that like button. If you guys are new here, hit that subscribe button. I create regular ESO content, so look forward to more, not only builds from me, but builds from the community and the top 5 battles and my own commentaries. So without further ado, let's take a look at that build, guys. So, to begin, we are a Khajiit on this Nightblade. I think for a critical damage build, Khajiit is the best race bet for sure. Now, because this is also a speed-based build and a regen-based build, Wood Elf is not a bad option too. Wood Elf gets the bonus movement speed on roll dodge, and they get the penetration, so damage-wise, they're going to be a little bit behind Khajiit, but they'll be a little bit faster. Orc is not a bad choice, and Redguard are not bad choices, but both of them pale to the Khajiit or Wood Elf picks. But Khajiit, of course, getting that 10% critical damage and critical healing bonus. We have got 70% weapon crit when we fully buff on this build. Yeah, it is definitely the best race choice for this build. Now, taking a look at the stat page, guys. So the first thing we've got is the 12k max mag. We've got 20.5k health, just kind of floating around there. Different values when we switch between bars. And then our stamina is sitting at 28.5k on this build. So we don't have crazy amounts of max stat, but we've got just enough to work with. The max health, I know, is definitely on the low side, and if you guys don't want to run this low HP, you can switch out the food that we're running to give you a little bit more hit points, actually quite a bit more. You're sitting around 23, 24k HP with a food switch, but you'll lose a bit of regen. So it's up to the user how you want to do this, but I actually think this is pretty decent for the max stats. They aren't super high, but they're exactly what we need to make this build function. Now, taking a look at the regen side of things, this is where the build starts to get out of whack. Well, we've got 1500, 1600 magicka recovery on the back bar, and then on our back bar, our stamina recovery is at 20.1k almost. And then we've got 1300 health recovery on both sides. Now, the health recovery on this build is, of course, increased by the Troll King set. So we get around 3,500 health recovery fully buffed on this build. A lot of health recovery going into this spec. And that's going to be a big reason why we can get away with just running Rally as our heal. If we didn't have all this health recovery, we would probably need more healing power to supplement that. But yeah, all the health recovery plus Troll King makes a huge difference on this build. Now, taking a look at the weapon damage and the weapon crit, we buff up our weapon damage to 3,066 on 64.5% crit. Now, when we go into stealth, we go up to around 3,300, and finally, we have the infused back bow. So we're sitting at just shy of 4k weapon damage on this build, and when we buff up with our attacks as well, we get the minor critical damage bonus, and we're going to be sitting at 70% crit on this build fully buffed. So I know the max dam and the weapon damage does not seem too crazy strong at first glance, but keep in mind we are playing a critical damage build and we get huge damage when we land those crits. That's where a lot of this build's outgoing damage is going to come from. So yeah, because we're running things like the Shadow Precise weapon, we don't have the highest weapon damage value. Now, something I do want to note is that really high crit rate is really nice for our healing power as well. We will ensure a majority of crits on our Rally Burst heal, as well as our heal over time from the Rally and our siphoning strikes, etc. Now, taking a look at the resists on this build, guys, we are not super bulky. 19k spell resist, 18.8k physical, and 2,660 crit resist. Yeah, just appropriate for medium armor kite build, I think. We're not crazy bulky at all, but we really don't need to be. We just need to be tough enough that we can take a few hits, get back into rolling, healing ourselves, purging off those effects, stealthing away as well, and we're good to go. So we don't need to have a huge amount of bulk on this build. This is more than fine, I think. Now, taking a look at the Mundus on this spec, we have got the Shadow Mundus for a 13% critical damage bonus. This is massive. Because we have a 70% crit rate, this is an 8 or 9% outgoing damage bonus. Such a huge deal for this build. This does not affect our critical healing. I wish that it did. I did think that in the past, but unfortunately it does not. Now, we are also a werewolf on this build, and we're actually a werewolf for good reason. It gives us the extra sustain we need on our back bar. You see when we swap bars, we have much higher sustain on the bow bar. When you're not actively bursting something, you're going to be spending a majority of your time on the bow bar, setting your combos, healing yourself, etc. So I think that having the better sustain on the bow bar is really worthwhile for this build. Now, let's take a look at the food we're running on this spec. So the food that I've chosen for the Critblade is the same as the last patch. We've gone with the health recovery, the magicka, and the stamina recovery for 2 hours. This is probably your all-around best bet to go with for food on this build. If you want to have more hit points, or if you want to play this build in the no CP campaign, I would highly recommend giving the Orzorga Smoked Bear Haunch a shot. You only lose out on a little bit of regen, around 50 regen across the board, but you gain a lot of additional hit points. And on top of it, if you go the Orzorga Smoked Bear Haunch route, you won't be running 5-1-1. You'll want to run 7 medium instead. And this just kind of opens up the build for no CP, as well as people who don't have their Undaunted passives. This is a great way to run the sustain you need. Now, at the end of the day, I honestly think that the purple food is probably better because the regen is so valuable on this build, but it's really up to the user. I think the max HP can definitely help, especially if you're learning to defend yourself on a Nightblade like this. And then the potion we use on this build is, of course, the Essence of Health. Restore health, stamina, and magicka, giving us the 20% recovery bonus to all of our stats as well. Very important for a high regen build like this. We just want to have as much incoming stat recovery as we possibly can, and this is going to just, well, help us do that. Not to mention the flat resource it gives, a huge part of our sustain as well. So let's take a look at the armor sets we're running on this build. So the first set that we have is, of course, the Troll King set. No changes actually to the gear from the previous setup of this build. Troll King, of course, such a fantastic set for the Stamina Nightblade. We get a bonus in our passives to health recovery. We have the major recovery bonus as well for health. Yeah, Troll King is just going to be a fantastic source of healing when our health begins to drop. It pretty much supplements us not running Vigor, and that's why we've got it here. Now, taking a look at the next set, we have got the Griffin's Jack. This is the best set in the game for a speed crit build. Griffin's is just such a good all-around set. We get weapon crit, weapon damage. We get the minor force and minor expedition off the 5-piece when we deal damage. No cooldown on this, so as long as we're actively in combat, we will keep these buffs up. This is really, really good for this style of build. It just gives us everything we need. It allows us not to have to run Race Against Time as well, so we can slot the Fighter's Guild skill, open up his potion slot for more sustain as well, get a little bit more weapon damage. Really nice stuff all around for this style of build. I would highly recommend. And on top of it, this set is really easy to get. You can buy it from vendors or go farm it in Somerset Overland yourself. So there you go. The next set that we've got is the Archer's Mindset, and this is, well, an absolutely incredible set. This is BIS Stealth Stamina gank set. You get so much damage out of the 5-piece on here. We get the max stam, weapon crit, yet again, fantastic for our crit build. And our critical damage is increased by 5% and an additional 10% when we attack from sneak or invisibility. Absolutely massive for this build, guys. So much damage. This is literally 15% damage when we crit. There is no other set in the game that's going to give us that increased outgoing burst on our front bar here at all times. So yeah, definitely BIS. The Archer's Mind can be a little bit trickier to get your hands on. It's probably better to get the Archer's Mind in the gear here. The Griffin's Jewelry is very cheap, and you have to get the Greatsword, unfortunately. This is the only expensive piece of this build. Now, the last set that we have is actually the Sensei Bow on the back bar. Now, I know that you guys are going to say, why don't you run the Master Bow here? There's two big reasons why we don't run the Master Bow. The first big reason is that this is a kind of solo PvP build. You're going to do a lot of target switching, and more often than not, when you're landing the burst on this build, you don't have the poison injection on the target anyway. You only poison inject when the target's bulkier, and you need to have that extra pepper on them. So for the most part, we're not whipping out a lot of poison injection, so we won't get a huge amount of use on the Master Bow in that kind of way. And then the second big reason is that we're a werewolf as well, so the extra regen on our back bar gets pushed even further by slotting the werewolf ultimate on our back bar. So that's why we have like 400 more recovery on the back bar. It makes a massive difference, and the sustain on this build would be nowhere near as good as it is if we didn't have this sustain on the back bar swap. So I think that the Sensei bow is definitely the way to go here. It doesn't have to be a Sensei bow, just any bow that gives stamina recovery as the two-piece. Now, for the traits on this build, for our weapons, we've got infused on the bow with the weapon spell damage enchant. You're going to lead a majority, if not all of your combos with a bow partial charged, light attack, or heavy attack. So you definitely want to have that infused enchant. It's just going to lead you more damage into the rest of your combo. And then on the front bar, we have gone with Precise and the disease enchant. Precise, again, because we're playing a crit build, an absolutely fantastic choice to up our outgoing critical damage on this spec. It's just going to give us more consistent critical lands, more consistent critical heals as well. And yeah, because we have so much invested into crit damage, Precise is going to outperform Nirnhoned here simply because we'll be landing the crits more often. And then for the enchant, we've gone with the disease enchant. And I picked the disease enchant simply because, well, it can apply the major defile, which is really nice. And on top of it, the burst from the enchant can crit as well. So we have a really high crit rate on the enchant. So we can effectively land a bigger combo when we get the disease enchant to proc as well. Just an additional 3.4k on the tooltip can go a long way in the burst game. Now, taking a look at the jewelry, I've actually gone with full robust on the Archer's Mind and the weapon damage enchants. Now, on the previous iteration of this build, I did run infused in the jewelry here. I actually just want to say, probably robust is the better choice. Having the bigger stam pool really helps because we have a very small stam pool. If you really want to push the damage on this build as far as you possibly can, go for the gold infused. Otherwise, robust is perfectly fine. If you're going to play this in no CP, you definitely want to go robust here. And the enchants on these bad boys are all weapon damage. The weapon damage, of course, just amplifying our outgoing damage and healing. Now, for the gear, guys, I actually have a mix of well-fitted and impenetrable. I've got 5 impen and 2 well-fitted. That is pretty ideal for a build like this. I think that's right on the money of where you want to be. And then for the enchants, guys, we've got all maximum stamina enchants except for the Troll King here. Now, I would recommend, if you're not going for the Orzorga's Smoked Bear Haunch, that you have a couple tri-stat Hacky Joes on your equipment here, so you have at least that 20-21k HP. If you're going to go for the Smoked Bear Haunch, I would say then just go for max stamina across the board. The Bear Haunch will give you the 23k HP that you're looking for, and of course, if you're going to go for the Bear Haunch, I would also recommend going for a full 5 medium on the gear instead of 5-1-1 to amplify the max stat like we have here. It's just a different way to kind of build this spec. It's totally up to the user. Both are going to function very similarly. I think for the higher end of things, going for the route that I have here is better for a more experienced player, but if you're a newer player, the Bear Haunch plus the 7 medium with all stam enchants is probably going to be the better way to go. Alright, so let's take a look at the weapon skills we're running on this build. We're going to start off on the front bar here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the skills because there are quite a few changes to Nightblade with the Elsweyr patch, and the skill set that we're running is actually remaining the same as last patch. However, there are a few changes to it. So we're going to note a few of those, and we're going to talk about how that impacts the build. So the first big one we have here is, of course, Surprise Attack. Fully buffed, we have a pretty decent Surprise Attack tooltip. No longer having that minor Berserk, we still have the 9k physical damage on the opponent, and if we flank the enemy, we shred through their armor, reducing their physical resist by 5% for 10 seconds. This, of course, is also a stun out of stealth as well. This is the only stun we have on the build now, so you have to land the Surprise Attack to get the stun, but that's totally fine. It fits with our single target kit, and it sets them off balance, which is really important too because we get that bonus damage to an off balance target. Now, this will not reduce the armor as much as it used to prior to the Elsweyr patch. Before the Elsweyr patch, this would reduce the opponent's armor by 5k. This is more likely going to reduce your opponent's armor by 2 to 3k depending on how tanky they are now. So it's not going to deal as much damage up front as it used to, but there are some changes to our other skills that can actually allow us to have a stronger surprise attack than before, and we'll get into that as we check out the rest of the build. So the next skill that we've got is Ambush, and Ambush also got some changes this patch as well. It's going to have the flat upfront physical damage. This is, of course, your primary gap closer for the build. It gives you the Empower, allowing your next light attack to hit 40% additional damage. Really, really nice for just stacking up that big burst at the end of our ambush, and it applies the minor vulnerability. Now, the minor vulnerability is actually a really strong debuff. 8 seconds on it is quite a long period of time, so you definitely want to incorporate Ambush into your combo simply because it's a great combination move. The bow heavy attack into Ambush, into the light attack, surprise attack, bash is a very clean cancel this patch. So I think that this is a really nice change, especially that we get that 8% kind of damage bonus that we lost from the Berserk, and we get it put into one of the skills that we're using in our rotation anyway. Now, taking a look at the next skill, we have got Camouflaged Hunter, and this is the only skill that I've changed from the previous patch. And, well, I actually changed to Camo Hunter because it gives you that minor Berserk from stealth when you attack an opponent from sneak, not cloak. So you have to be in crouch in order to get this bonus. So most of the time in, like, heated combat and stuff, you will not get this minor Berserk combo. But when you want to hit someone really hard with a powerful stealth gank, you have that option to add the 8% additional damage. This 8% additional damage more than makes up for the loss of the armor penetration we get from surprise attack. Not to mention, we don't have to land the surprise attack to have that bonus damage now, so just our entire combo coming out of stealth is going to be a little bit stronger. And yeah, honestly guys, this is why this build has more potential maximum damage than it did last patch. The addition of the Shadow Mundus plus the change to the minor Berserk here, we're actually hitting quite a bit harder out of stealth than we used to, and just great synergy with this build. Now, Camo Hunter, of course, is also going to give us the minor savagery buff for the 10% weapon critical, which is really important, and we're going to get 3% additional weapon damage on our front bar for slotting this here, and we get that stealth detect. Now, the stealth detect is so useful, especially when you're fighting other Nightblades. It gives you an edge in the Nightblade one-on-one, so having it on your kit for World PvP is incredibly valuable. Now, taking a look at the next skill, we have got Rally here. Rally is going to be a mix of things for this build. It is our heal over time to proc the Troll King whenever we take that big damage. It's going to be major brutality for that weapon damage buff. Very important to have that on this spec. And finally, it is also going to be the burst heal of this build. Now, our Rally tooltip isn't too terribly insanely high. However, we have that really high crit rate and 3.5k health recovery. So this burst heal really goes a long way on the Stamina Nightblade. The combination of this with our health recovery is more than enough healing power to survive, get back into stealth, or kite your way out of the problem and re-engage with your opponent. Now, the next skill that we have is Relentless Focus, and I stuck with Relentless Focus because of that big burst it gives us with the Spectral Bow. If you look at the tooltip on the Spectral Bow, it's actually higher than Incapacitating Strike, so it's the most powerful attack that we have on this build, and I definitely wanted to keep it for that. They changed it this patch so that the Spectral Bow will heal you for 33% of the damage dealt if you're within 7 meters from the opponent. We're going to be within melee range for the most part when we're going for those kill moves, so we will likely get that heal when we use this. And then finally, while using this ability for 30 seconds, we reduce the damage taken by 3% with every light and heavy attack we land up to 5 times. So this actually gives us a 15% damage mitigation when we have it fully stacked on this build. And that makes quite a difference to the Nightblade, I think. So not only is our maximum burst better this patch, but our bulk is actually better too. And it's kind of weird because coming into Elsweyr, people were like, Stamblade's getting nerfed, Stamblade's getting nerfed, but honestly, this build is coming out of the Elsweyr changes better than it was before, and yeah, Relentless has to do with that. And then for the ultimate on this bar, guys, I have gone with Incapacitating Strike. We get that 13k disease damage. I will buff up and cloak for you guys so you can see the full tooltip here. 14.7k disease damage, so not a crazy high tooltip, but that critical damage we have is what allows us to push this incredibly far, and it increases the damage we deal to our opponents by 20% for 6 seconds, so our follow-up skills will deal a lot of damage as well. If we have over 120 ult when we use this, we will silence the opponent for 3 seconds. This is, well, it's not as good as the stun was, to be honest. The stun was better than the silence, but the silence can be niche, and it can help you kill certain targets, like Magicka-heavy opponents that just don't see the silence coming, or they don't, or you just catch them off guard with it. And then finally, we get the Reeve as well on our front bar, which restores magicka and stamina when we deal damage with light attacks on an enemy with a negative effect added to them. Now, we're not putting out a whole bunch of negative effects outside of our intro burst, and we're not doing a whole bunch of weaving for the most part. So this is a nice sustain ultimate while we're rotating on the opponent up close, but for the most part, you won't get a huge amount of sustain out of this. We'll be spending a lot more time on the back bar, and we'll talk about why we don't have Reeve on the back bar when we get there too. Now, if you don't want to run in cap, I would actually recommend that you try out Berserker Strike on this build. It has a slightly higher tooltip than in cap. It costs quite a bit more, but if you morph it to Onslaught and you get the kill with it, you restore the cost of the ultimate back, so you can do multiple back-to-back onslaughts. And on top of it, when you use this ultimate, you ignore your target's physical spell resist. And that's a big deal for a burst ult, especially on a crit build. It just means that against really tanky targets, which is like the one thing this thing could struggle against, is a really, really bulky opponent. Onslaught is going to give you that burst to actually threaten that really bulky opponent. So I think that if you guys want to try out Onslaught, I would highly recommend trying it on this build. I personally really like In-Cap and Onslaught. Between the two, it's a pretty big toss-up. If I had Onslaught morphed on this character, I probably would have used it in the footage, but, you know, it's totally up to you guys. For the sake of burst, Onslaught is the better ultimate, but In-Cap is just going to fire out more often than the Onslaught probably will, so totally up to you guys there. Now, taking a look at the back bar, guys, our first ability we have is Poison Injection. This is going to be your primary damage over time for this spec. On top of it, it's also an execute dot, so it'll increase in damage as your opponent's health drops below 50%, which is really, really nice. It just allows us to get people closer to that finish. We're not actually running an execute on this build, and the reason we don't run the execute is because we have literally so much firepower without it. We don't really need it. But if we're fighting something that's too tanky and we do need that extra pressure, Poison Injection will help us out there. Now, on this build, you will not be whipping out a lot of Poison Injections. Like I said, you save it for the targets that aren't going down to the rest of your burst. For the most part, this is just a passive ability that we use for when we really need to close in on that kill. Now, the next skill that we have is Efficient Purge, and Efficient Purge is, well, one of my favorite skills to run on Stamina Nightblade. You guys will see in the footage, we don't use Efficient Purge a lot, but when we do, it is the one skill that we can use to save ourselves. There are certain things that Cloak and Shade cannot get you out of, and Efficient Purge will save you from them. Things like purging off curses, purging off Power of the Light, etc. It just allows you to ensure that you can stay in stealth better, you can purge off marks, everything. I know it's a very expensive skill, but we have a ton of magicka sustain, and yeah, you can definitely get a lot of use out of it on this build. You won't be spamming it a lot, like I said. Most of the time, Cloak and Shade are your better defensive options, but when that is not an option, Purge will save you for sure. Now, the next skill that we have is Siphoning Attacks, and this is, of course, going to play into our magicka sustain, as well as a little bit of healing power on our light and heavy attacks, and some magicka resource return while we're actively attacking things with our light and heavies as well. And we get the bulk magicka restore at the end of the 20 seconds, so if you just cast this thing and let it expire, or you rebuff it after 20 seconds, you are pretty much gaining 3k plus magicka every time. Now, the reason I went with the Siphoning Attack morph is because this build is incredibly magicka intensive, so we need to have that additional magicka sustain. So don't be tempted to go for the stamina morph here. You want to have a really high cloak uptime on this build, the ability to purge, re-enter stealth very quickly, and shade away. So the Siphoning Attacks is definitely the way to go. Now, the next skill that we've got is Shadow Image, and this is, well, one of the best Nightblade skills that you have for your defensive kit. You guys will see in the gameplay, Shadow Image is such a good juke skill. You throw the image down, and then when you reuse the ability, you can teleport back to where your shade was. It just allows you to move around very quickly and throw groups of players off. And yeah, this is going to save you big time in PvP, especially solo play, 1vx, stuff like that. Even in like group fights, Shade is such an important skill to help you get the crap out of there when things are looking bad. On top of it, the Shade will deal a little bit of magic damage, nothing too crazy, but you get the minor maim on your opponent as well for 4 seconds. So in a one-on-one, the Shade allows you to have a lot more durability against your opponent too. Now, the next ability that we have is Shadowy Disguise, and this is going to be, of course, our primary access to stealth. Our only access to stealth, really. We can go into Sneak for that minor Berserk, but while in Sneak, we're a little bit on the slow side, so when you're actively fighting, this is how you're going to get into stealth. You cloak yourself and become invisible for 3 seconds, and then your next direct attack is going to be a guaranteed critical strike. This is really nice because we're playing such a heavy crit build with so much critical damage, so this just helps us push our damage further coming out of cloak. And of course, invisibility is a huge deal in PvP, and you'll see in the gameplay, invisibility makes Nightblade Nightblade. It's just so strong, and we can get away with stuff that other classes would not because we can turn invisible. Now, finally, for the ultimate, I have gone with the Werewolf Berserker. You can go with either morph of this. I actually don't have my Werewolf leveled up at all. I'm only 2 Werewolves, so yeah, I'm not really caring what ult I go with here. It's more just for that passive stamina recovery slot on our back bar. Like I said, we've got the Senshei Bow on the back bar, so this makes a big deal on the back bar just to help push us the sustain even further. Now, we could have gone with Incap on the back bar as well, so we have the dual slotted Reeve passive, because you do have to slot this in order to get that passive. However, because we spend so much time in stealth and so much time kiting around on this build, the extra regen is definitely going to be better than trying to rely on the extra light attacks on the back bar here. Now, you definitely can turn into a werewolf on this build if you want, but it's not going to be the best werewolf. It's more for that passive slot, so it's really up to you guys. You'll see in the footage, I did go wolf once, and, well, I didn't have any skills, so it didn't go so well. But anyway, guys, moving on to our champion points, let's take a look at our green tree to start. We got 37 Warlord, 1 in Siphoner. So a big focus on Warlord here for that break free. I actually have nothing in Sprinter because we are on a Stamblade. We will be doing some sprinting, but because of that really high stealth uptime, it's not as much as other medium armor Stam classes, so we can actually just forego Sprinter here. 1 point in Siphoner because I just had a little bit left over. In the Lover tree, we've got 43 Arcanist, 56 in Mooncalf, and 49 in Healthy. This tree is absolutely stacked on this build. It's a regen build, so we just put so many points in here. All 3 regens are incredibly valuable for this build. If you want, you could actually invest the most points, 56 Healthy, 49 Mooncalf, just to push your health recovery further if you want to have a little bit more durability. Really up to the user yet again. Now, taking a look at the Shadow Tree, we've got 44 Tumbling and 40 in Shadow Ward. Both roll, dodge, and blocking are very important for a medium armor kite build in PvP. You need to block some attacks, and you need to roll some attacks on a spec like this, so that's why we have so many points in these guys. Now, taking a look at our blue tree, we've got nothing in the Apprentice as we don't have any mag skills and we're not investing into healing done on that side there. In the Atronach, we got 81 Master at Arms, 39 Physical Weapon Expert. We've got that Tactician passive, such a good passive for PvP, especially this build. We roll dodge to set an opponent off balance. We can then stun them with a fully charged or partial charged heavy attack, which is such a big deal because it's literally a free stun. On a kite build, man, this is one of the best things to get used to using. Very, very good stuff. And then in the Ritual tree, we have got 49 Mighty, 45 Piercing, and a whopping 56 in Precise Strikes. Lots of critical damage on this build. The important passives that we get, of course, are Perfect Strike for that bonus critical chance, Exploiter for the bonus damage against an off-balance opponent, and then Last Stand for that additional ultimate. I mean, we'll most likely have the Incap up all the time, and it's the only ult we're using, but you know, Last Stand is Last Stand. If you're going to run Onslaught, this could push even further than it does with Incap on the front bar here. Of course, we have the points in Mighty for that outgoing physical damage. We've got a little bit in Penetration too. And then for our critical damage on this build, well, we've got some pretty big stacks, guys. So we start at a base critical damage multiplier of 50% additional bonus damage. This is going to give us 70% in total, plus Khajiit is 80%, plus Minor Force is 90%, plus the Shadow Mundus is 103%. With our Nightblade passives, we go up to 113% additional damage. And then finally, with the Archer's Mind on top, we are sitting at 128% additional critical damage on this build. That means your opponent needs to have like 8k plus impen in order to stop your critical hits. Nobody has that. That is just an insane amount of critical damage. It's going to allow us to deal so much damage coming out of stealth on this build. Now, taking a look at the Steed tree, guys, we've got a pretty stacked Steed tree, 61 Ironclad, 59 Resistant, reduce our incoming direct damage that we take by 21%, and increase our critical resistance, both very important for the build, and then Spell Shield, Medium Armor Focus, just to give us around 2k physical spell resist. to bulk up our resists as well. In the Lady Tree, we've got 75 points for 32 Hardy, 32 Elemental Defender, and 11 Thick Skin. I wanted to keep Critical Leech because it can, of course, proc Troll King, so there we go. But we focused, of course, on incoming physical and magical damage. Not a lot in Thick Skin because we have Cloak and we have a Purge to suppress dots, so there you go. And then finally, in the Lord Tree, we've got 32 Quick Recovery for that additional healing power, giving us those bigger, fatter rally crits. And that is the build, ladies and gentlemen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump into that PvP commentary. So I've got two fights for you guys here. One fight's going to be a little bit more about getting kills, and the other fight's going to be about that defensive gameplay. So the first fight here is about getting kills. There you see right away, look at our damage potential. We dropped him to 1% health, but he gets a huge heal from the Earth Gore and, of course, the Breath of Life. So we're forced to just give up on that kill. And there's a lot of yellow coming through this bridge here. It's just, there's probably like 20 plus yellow swarming around, so I'm just being careful. And we hit this guy with the beautiful combo, the bow heavy attack into the ambush, again on this guy here, into the light attack, the ultimate, and the bash. Really clean stuff, making sure to incorporate the ambush and the bow heavy into this combo. It actually allows us to just have huge combination damage out of stealth on these guys, and we pick up quite a few kills there. But right away we got a Sork behind us. He starts cursing us up. I just come back behind these trees, go for a dodge roll. All the negative effects wear off there, and we go right back into stealth here, and I'm just going to try to pick up some kills as these guys are resin the other players here. There were a couple EP here, but I'm pretty sure they got killed off. Just a huge smack on that guy, bringing him down as he's lower HP, and we go right back into our cloak. And I go for a line of sight behind the rocks here, moving behind the enemy group, just not sitting in their line of focus. It'll make it so that even if you pop out of stealth, you're less likely to get seen. And we're just going to keep following this yellow group around here. A huge combo on this healer there. The Earth Gore won't save him this time, so we finish him off with the surprise attack there. Roll cancel out of that one, and now we're going to reset on this guy here. He's getting smacked on by the EP, though, so he's going to go down. We're just going to kite back around the side of the enemy group here and re-engage from behind. Very important when we use our stealth to be engaging from somewhere where people don't know that we're going to come. Look at that beautiful combo out of stealth. The friendly Templar poking him with the final jab there. We're going to put big damage into this guy there, and we finish him off with, I think, the Spectral Bow, and we're going to go right away on top of this Dragon Knight, get the kill on him too, and the rest of these yellow are just forcing down these red players that they see. They're zerging them down one at a time, so I'm very careful coming in and out of stealth here. There you see we quickly finish off that player there. Go for the Purge. Unfortunately, we don't get the Purge on the Curse there. I did want to get the Purge on the Curse just to prevent it from popping us out of stealth like it did right there, but it's okay. And now that we're out of stealth, the entire yellow group is starting to focus fire on us. I go for the Purge there, removing the power of the light, and they reapply it as I enter stealth, but it's okay. The fact that we removed the first power of the light just means that we didn't get popped in stealth there with all the players looking at us. That probably would have been a death sentence, and that right there is why I say you need to run Purge on the Stamina Nightblade. It just gives you the ability to control stuff like that better and allows you to engage, disengage a lot smoother because you have the option to remove those effects that are going to pull you back out of your cloak. And there we see we take another power of the light. I just let this one wear off though. We don't need to purge it. And I set down the shade, teleport back to where my shade was, and we're just going to cloak on out of there. Just making ourselves a very difficult target to keep heads on so these guys can't open up on us. We hit this guy with the bow heavy into the weapon swap and the surprise attack out of stealth. Now, if you actually block cancel the surprise attack really quickly, the surprise attack lands first and you still get the stun on them, and the bow heavy will land second. So really nice combo there. And of course, Purge saving us again so we can reliably re-enter stealth here and get away. And we're just going to reset our buffs and then reopen up on these guys here. We go for the target in the front. From behind, we hit him with the surprise attack. Nice big combo on the ultimate there. Unfortunately, a lot of healing power coming down, and we are going to get absolutely smashed by this yellow group. Still, we did have a good fight there, showing off some of the firepower and the mobility of this build. Now, coming into our second clip here, we're going to have another solo fight on this build, and we're just going to be outside of our keep here. A lot of blue players coming into this fielded position. We go for the kite behind them here, and these guys actually are running a lot of stealth detect on them, so this is a very difficult engagement for a Stamina Nightblade, but I did want to show this clip just to show you guys the defensive capabilities of this build, and how even though they have the toolkit to kind of shut me down, I can still work effectively against them. So we go for for our first combo there. The enemy Templar responds right away with the block into the healing. Really good gameplay on his part, just preventing us from finishing him off with that final little bit of the combo. And right there, we get popped by the AoE stealth detect, and we take a super nasty javelin. Now, that shade would have been the best shade we could have done. That would have been a great escape. Fortunately, we managed to kite back in between the trees here. We cloak in between the trees, and we're going to work our way away from this group. A lot of stealth detect coming down, so we have to be very, very careful how we engage with a group like this. If we get caught in the wrong spot, it can be death for the Stamblade, and our Purge won't save us if we're caught with too many snares in the open. So as we come back towards the mile gate here, you see, we just quickly finish off that Sork. Another player on the bottom here. I just helped the EP finish him off as well. Take a nasty oil dump there. I try to purge the oil. Unfortunately, we ended up purging some other negative effects, so we just go into Cloak to suppress the oil. The combination of Purge and Cloak, a really good combo to prevent yourself from getting hit by a lot of crap, and we probably should have gone for the Cloak right away, but I did not notice that we had the other effects on us, and I end up engaging with this blue group. Of course, I set the shade down preemptively. This Templar does a great job just blocking that combo from me. Had he not had the block up, we would have killed him. And a super cheeky shade. We jump off the edge, and we teleport back up to the top. Hopefully, a few blue players jump the edge there too, and we managed to actually escape in stealth. This guy jumped the edge. We set down the shade on him. Another player is just coming around the corner with the AoE frost stuff. Now, as I kite back behind this group, we did the direction change as we enter stealth, so they're going to be shooting AoEs in the wrong direction, which is really important. If you're playing a build like this, sleight of hand is such a big part of this playstyle, so you want to make sure that you use your sleight of hand as effectively as possible. And there you see again, we're going to set the shade down, teleport back, and just keep weaving between the terrain. This time, they throw the AoE detect on, and I actually used the shade to break my own stealth right as the detect hit me, so we didn't get popped there, so we could re-enter stealth as soon as exiting the AoE. But here we managed to actually kite back around the other side of the mile gate, and we're going to open up on this player there, hit him with a nice combo out of stealth. Down he goes. This guy goes for the res right away. We hit him with a full combo as well. He does a good job soaking up the damage there. We don't get to stick around for the kill. A lot of AoE coming down, a lot of stealth detect, so we're just going to kite back around the inside of this thing here, reset our buffs, and I'm going to go for a re-engage with these blue, of course making sure to use our shade. We already have the shade set from before, so we open up with just a poison injection here. I just want to see what we got. This guy really low HP. He almost didn't survive the bow heavy into the surprise attack bash. That was like 17k damage on him, and we've got more blue players coming out of stealth. We dotted this guy up. We're going to ambush into him, hit him with the surprise attack. Down he goes as well. We've got an enemy Nightblade jumping on top of us here, but I'm just going to hug my cloak here and just use my position to my advantage. Just keep rotating around these guys. Don't stand in the same spot. And this guy's going for the res. We hit him with the poison injection, get him with a nice little cancel combo on the roll, right back into stealth. Very important that we don't sit out of stealth if we can help it on this build, especially with so many players around us. Look at the enemy Nightblades hitting us with the fear there, and we've got other enemy Nightblades coming out of stealth as well. So we just go for the cloak into the direction change, and this guy actually goes for the detect pot. So it doesn't let me know that he can see him, but he's still able to target me through my cloak. And, well, we're just going to try to get back into stealth here, taking a lot of AoE pressure from the Templar as well. The enemy Nightblade putting the pressure out with the staff on us, but we managed to get a good shade, just reposition ourselves. The enemy, I thought it was a meteor there, so I did go for the block, and we're just going to kite out again. The Dragon Knight hits us with a leap. We're really low on resource here. We go for that clutch cloak, and we managed to just escape. Our potion comes up, but had we been caught there, that could have been the end of us. So we're just going to kite around the top here and look to see if any blue are coming through. I don't really want to get involved in this big AoE mash that's going on in the gateway here. And I drop down, unfortunately take a stun right away. Enemy Nightblade jumping on top of us. I try to hit the Nightblade with a heavy there, but we end up not getting the smack on him. He goes into stealth, so I'm just going to come back up the top and see what blues follow us. This guy here follows us, an enemy Templar. He's going to hit us with the power of the light right away, and we start playing some real shade games with these guys. We're going to throw down the shade here and jump off the edge, and we're going to teleport back in the middle of our jump. And look at how many of the blue players actually jump off the edge after us. I think 3 of these guys have gone off the edge after me, and we just kite down to the bottom here, taking a lot of snares from these guys, and the shade right back up top. The troll mode knows no bounds. We're going to reset our shade again. These guys are really after it. They really want to put me down, but we're we're going to keep playing games with them. Another jump off the edge there. We go into the cloak, and we don't get the reset on the shade there. And yeah, these blue guys are really hard on my tail now. They're kind of tired of getting trolled around by the Nightblade. And we go for the last-ditch effort. The wolf form, it's not going to save us. So that is the end of the commentary, guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you guys are interested in seeing some live gameplay from me, a link to my Twitch, of course, is in the description below. If you guys want to send in any clips for the top 5 or send in a build to be featured on the channel, send that to KristoferESO@hotmail.com. More information below as well. And finally, we are sponsored by What the Fast. They're a VPN for gamers. They give me better ping to my favorite games, and they're free to try for the first 14 days. No credit card to sign up. So give it a shot if you guys want to check it out. No harm, no foul. And of course, if you guys really love the show, you can always become a patron on Patreon. Without you guys, I would not be able to keep doing this job that I love. So thank you guys so much for helping me out here. It really means a lot. So have a great night, everybody. I hope to see you again next time, and I hope that you like the build.